What's going on, Dolphins? I'm finally making my post-game analysis video. It's gonna be short. I'm not gonna say anywhere near as much as I would normally, or as much as I wanted to before, because I really don't want to now. And I just put the basic thing together. I'm not gonna do a play-by-play, and I'm not gonna give nearly as much commentary or examples for the things that I have to say. I'm just gonna give you the stats, the injury report, and just a real brief commentary. So real quick, we didn't have Shaq Lawson or Durham Smythe. Jakeem Grant was questionable. We did get Byron Jones back. Austin Jackson went on to IR because of his foot injury. For the 49ers, they were out cornerback Kawan Williams, who was replaced by a rookie who got annihilated by us. Cornerback Emmanuel Mosley, cornerback Dante Johnson were both out as well. So they were missing like half, if not more, of their secondary. Jamar Taylor also played in one of their place. And we know him. He's a serviceable backup at best. They were also missing defensive end Ezekiel Ansah. And we also know that, their defense was also missing Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas because they were out for the year, Their injuries happened, a few weeks ago. Let's see. Raheem Mostert was questionable, but he did play. So was Deebo Samuel, who also played. Cornerback Akello Witherspoon was questionable. I'm not sure if he played or not. And then Jimmy Garoppolo obviously played, but he played like trash. And there is some, certainly some chance that he was still being bothered by his foot injury, his ankle injury, because he was just off target for the entire first half. He obviously got benched in the second half, and he was just garbage. He, couldn't square up his shoulders, couldn't set his feet, didn't get, he's just off target all day, and that obviously had a lot to do with their loss. So let's get into this. Dolphins are now 2-3. So are the 49ers. They dropped to 2-3. We won 43-17. We had 436 total yards. They had 259. We had 342 pass yards to their 128. 94 rush yards to their 131. 6.9 yards per play to their 4.4. No fumbles or interceptions for us. 1 fumble, 2 interceptions for them. The 2 interceptions were Jimmy Garoppolo, and the fumble came from CJ Beathard late in the game. We were 33% down on third downs, which is obviously still not anywhere near good enough. And in any other normal game, and really, frankly, if we were playing the 49ers at full strength, that would have been a stat that would have been terrible and would have probably led us to lose. But the rest of our stats wouldn't have been that good either. They were 20%. We had the ball for 36-53. They had it for 23 minutes and 7 seconds. We both had 7 penalties. Ryan Fitzpatrick was 22 for 28, 78.6 completion percentage, 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a 154.5 passer rating. CJ Beathard was 9 for 18, 50%, 94 yards, a touchdown, and an 84 passer rating. And he played the entire second half, and that was still better than Jimmy Garoppolo's stat line, who played in the first half and was absolute trash, who had 7 completions on 17 attempts, 41.8% completion percentage, 77 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, and a 15.7 passer rating. So he was garbage. Played like garbage. Myles Gaskin led the way for us in rushing, 16 rushes, 57 yards, a touchdown, and a 3.6 average. Matt Breida had 9 rushes, 28 yards, and a 3.1. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 3 rushes for 16 yards and a 5.3. Raheem Mostert, 11 rushes for 90 yards and an 8.2 average for them. Jeffrey Wilson, 4 rushes, 27 yards, and a 6.8. Kyle Juszczyk, 2 rushes, 11 yards, a touchdown, and a 5.5. For us, Preston Williams led the way in receiving, 4 of 5, 106 yards and a touchdown. Mike Gesicki, 5 of 6, 91. Devontae Parker, 2 of 3, 50 yards and a touchdown. Myles Gaskin, 5 of 5, 34. Matt Breida, 1 of 1, 31. And Isaiah Ford, 2 of 2 for 23. George Kittle was 4 of 8 for 44. Brandon Ayuk, 3 of 6 for 44. Kendrick Bourne, 2 of 4, 30 and a touchdown. Raheem Mostert, 3 of 3 for 29 yards. And Deebo Samuel, 2 of 8 for 19 yards. Jakeem Grant had a fumble on a punt, but he got it back. Jimmy Garoppolo had a fumble while he was in the game, but didn't lose it. And CJ Beathard had one late in the game and lost it. Jerome Baker led the way for us, 6 solo, 1 assisted tackle, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Andrew Van Ginkel, 4 solo, 2 assisted, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble. Eric Rowe, 4 solo, 2 pass defense. Bobby McCain, 3 solo, 1 interception for 19 yards and a pass defense. Kamu Grugier-Hill, 3 solo tackles. Nick Needham, 2 solo, 1 assisted and a pass defense. Emmanuel Ogbah, 1 solo, 2 assisted, a sack, a forced fumble, and a pass defense. Zach Sealer, 1 solo, 1 assisted, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Xavier Howard, 1 solo, 1 assisted, 1 interception for 29 yards and 2 pass defense. Christian Wilkins, 1 solo, 1 assisted, 1 forced fumble, fumble recovery. And Landon Roberts, 1 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Fred Warner led the way for them, since 7 solo, 3 assisted, and a tackle for loss. Jimmy Ward, 5 solo, 2 assisted. Jaquiski Tart, 5 solo, 2 assisted. Dre Greenlaw, 4 solo, 2 assisted. Quan Alexander, 4 solo, 1 assisted, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Jamar Taylor, 3 solo tackles and a tackle for loss. Brian Allen, 3 solo tackles. Kerry Hyder, 1 solo, 1 assisted, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Kevin Givens, 1 solo, 1 assisted, and 1 tackle for loss. DJ Jones, 1 solo, 1 assisted, 1 tackle for loss. Kicking game, Jason Sanders was 5 of 5 on his field goals, along a 50 and 4 of 4 on his extra points. Robbie Gould, 1 for 1 on field goals with a long of 57. It was from 57, 2 of 2 on his extra points. Let's see. Matt Hawk, 2 for 42, 2 punts for 42, and a long of 53. Real quick, I want to note, so last week against the Seahawks, right, we kicked 5 field goals, 1 touchdown late in the game. Obviously was nowhere near enough to beat an extremely high-powered team like the Seahawks, as I said. And this week, we still kicked 5 field goals, but also had 4 touchdowns. And obviously, that makes a huge difference. With that, we would have beat the Seahawks, right? It was 43 points. That would have been enough to beat the Seahawks, but obviously they didn't play like that then. Also, but of course, I'll get to the commentary in a second. I just wanted to compare that real quick and note that when you do, you know, kicking field goals all day obviously is going to do nothing. But if you add those 5 field goals with 4 touchdowns, that is likely enough to give you a win. Let's see. Mitch Wishnowski had 3 punts, 44.3 average, 1 inside the 20 and a long of 58. Jakeem Grant had 1 kickoff return for 15 yards. Kevin White had 1 for 20. Punt return, Jakeem Grant had 3 for 3 average and a long of 5. Trent Taylor had 1 for 17 yards. So, look, my only commentary really here, like I said, I'm not going to do the drive-by-drive analysis with additional commentary. I'm not going to give the specifics on all the different penalties and, you know, note all of the notable mistakes that the 49ers made in the first half and so on and so forth. But look, I mean, at the end of the day, and obviously, you know, people are going to hate that I say this, especially Dolphins fans. But this is my, you know, real commentary and what I believe the actual state of the Dolphins is. But I just don't think that they were that good. I don't think there's really any evidence to show that they were as good as they performed. Did they perform well? Yes. Did they have a good game? Yes, unquestionably. They executed well. They had good play calling, and they really took advantage of the problems that the 49ers had and exhibited. And for sure, you definitely have to, you know, good teams absolutely do that. However, there are several other factors or a few other factors rather, that go into the ultimate outcome of the game that are significant. And I think had they been different, the likelihood is that the Dolphins probably would have gotten beaten, and probably, maybe not by some like massive extreme margin, but probably by a touchdown or so. So what I mean by that is first and foremost, as I mentioned with the injury report, their defense was not even close to a match. And look, and part of my evaluation for the current state of the Dolphins and why I think they're not as good as they are is because even in some of their earlier games where they had, solid performances and showed some impressive things, etc. I mean, look, the Dolphins, with the exception of the game against the Patriots, have played extremely beat up teams. They are massively injured teams. But even with the Patriots, we're still massively different than what we have expected up till now. Their defense was 100% different, with not in scheme wise, but personnel wise. And that makes a huge deal. So, I believe that our offense performed better in that game in large part because of that. Same thing against the Bills. Pretty much our entire offense was down the middle of the field that day. Against the Bills. It would not have been that easy for us if they had Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds. They have since gotten Tremaine Edmonds back, but Matt Milano is still out. And they had a ton of problems in last night's game. Aside from that are also massive relevant factors. But anyway, that's not the discussion here. So point is, they were beat up, and that's why, but we still, ultimately lost that game because they are definitely unquestionably the better team. And they also didn't shoot themselves in the foot a million times like they did last night in the game against the Titans. Let's see. I mean, the Seahawks still unquestionably the better team, but had significant injuries and still managed to win. They also did get victimized by some bad officiating and were able to overcome that because they are flat out the better team. On the other hand, the 49ers, and why we won that game, yes, they played a good game like they did against the Jags, but even in that game, I told you, look, and I was right. They're not going to be able to beat the Seahawks if, all they're doing is scoring field goals, and if they can't ever punch it in the end zone, and so on and so forth, right? So, anyway, and that ended up being the case, right? But in the 49ers game, they started off at a massive, massive disadvantage because their entire defense pretty much was just decimated by injuries, right? And they had some more even in the game, which is not, unfortunately, not unexpected. So that hurt them even more as the game wore on. But their entire defensive line is completely different. They had like zero pass rushers because, Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas were both already on the injured reserve and out for the season, and they were without Emmanuel Ogbah. So their defense had no pass rush, and then they couldn't cover either. The rookie just got obliterated. Allen, I forgot his first name, but their rookie Allen just got obliterated, by Ryan Fitzpatrick and Chan Gailey, being aggressive in the first half, right? And then obviously the team executing well. And then, obviously Jamar Taylor didn't, he's whatever, like I said, at best maybe a serviceable backup. But so, they went into that game with a massive, massive disadvantage. Now, did the Dolphins take advantage of it? Yes, and that's good on them, and they have to be able to do that. But I'd rather see them beat the 49ers in the way that they did, 43-17, when they're at full strength. That would actually prove something to me, right? Them beating a massively beat up team, and then even their offense, right? The vast majority of their mistakes on offense, or their problems on offense, or at least maybe not even the majority, but certainly a large chunk of it was their own mistakes. Jimmy Garoppolo was just inaccurate as fuck all day. He had a 15.7 passer rating. He threw 2 interceptions, right? He was just garbage. He couldn't set his feet, couldn't square his shoulders, right? And then they had some drop passes thrown in there as well. that were on them, not on the Dolphins defense, or at least more on them than the Dolphins defense. Hit them in the hands, drop the fucking ball, right? And it wasn't so much necessarily that a Dolphins defender got their hand in and broke it up. They just flat out dropped the ball, right? Anyway, so, and then when it comes to the officiating, ultimately it evened out as far as, in pretty much all regards. In other words, as far as overall quantity, obviously both teams ended up with 7 accepted penalties. It was pretty even in both quantity and quality of penalties. So by the end of the game, right? Because there were definitely some bullshit calls, and again, I'm not going to go into the specifics right now, but there were definitely some bullshit calls against the Dolphins. Just bad calls that they should not have made. But there were also bad calls, super shitty calls against the 49ers. It just so happened that their calls happened to be in the first half of the game, when their defense couldn't stop anything and their offense was just shooting themselves in the foot all day for that first half, and Jimmy Garoppolo was playing like trash. So that aided in setting them back into a deep hole early on, right? Whereas for the Dolphins, we had some of those penalties, and ultimately throughout the entire game, it ended up being, you know, an overall evening, or it evened out a lot more, like I said, in quantity and quality of penalty throughout the game. But overall, it did actually affect the 49ers more, because they had theirs, the bad calls against them were earlier on in the game, which helped to set them into a hole, a pretty substantial hole early in the game. So honestly, I think personally, it's not so much that the Dolphins are as good as it would seem and what the other Dolphins YouTubers are making it out to be, but rather they played well, unquestionably. So I don't want people to think that I'm not saying that they didn't play well. They did. They played great. The players on the field played wonderful. The coaching was great as well. Good play calling, etc. But it would not have been anywhere near what it was if we were playing a 49ers team that was at full strength, that had Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas, Ezekiel Ansah. Like, if those guys were in there, and if you know, their top corners were in there, we would not have been able to move the ball on them nearly as well. I can virtually guarantee it. I could be wrong, but that's the thing is I want to be wrong, but they have to prove that they can do that, right? And that makes a far greater statement than the Dolphins, who, if we're keeping it real, up to this point have not really experienced very many injuries, right? Up to this point, and up till the most recent injury, the Devon Godshaw injury that will likely keep him out the rest of the season, his biceps injury, that's the worst one. And when it comes to quantity and quality of injury, we've actually been super fortunate. So the Dolphins are, even though I believe the Dolphins are not as good as what it seems they are, I believe part of the reason for that is, or big part of the reason for that, is because they've been at pretty much full strength the entire season, where they've been playing teams that have been exceptionally beat up, right? So they've been having to bring in backups, and even in some cases literally signing guys off the street, right? So you know, and then when you add that into the fact that, you know, Jimmy Garoppolo played like absolute shit, their offense couldn't do anything, and they just continued to fucking shoot themselves in the foot, make mistakes. Again, most of that was their fault, not so much how the Dolphins played defense, right? It wasn't so much that the Dolphins made spectacular plays, but they just shot themselves in the foot. Jimmy Garoppolo was super off target, right? Anyway, etc. I'm not going to repeat that. And then the penalties, that the bad calls that set them back early. I'm frankly very convinced that if their defense was up to full strength, if Jimmy Garoppolo, or if they, I guess maybe even if they just would have had CJ Beathard in the game to begin with, because he played okay, he played solid, and probably would have gave them a better chance, since it would seem that Jimmy's injury is still bothering him enough to affect his play. That's my guess. I'm not 100%. And that's what the commentators speculated as well. But anyway, you know, if that wasn't the case, and if they didn't get victimized early on, that helped to set them in a large hole, right? It's all of those factors combined, right? So like if we would have played the 49ers and they had their full defensive strength and Jimmy Garoppolo didn't play like shit and their offense was humming, right? If that was the case, then maybe they could have gotten those penalties early on and still overcame that and still could have won the game, right? That could have been the case. So it depends on what the full picture is. So when you have the Dolphins play great with, you know, good play calling, etc., against a defense that is massively decimated, has no cover guys and no pass rush, and then also the other team's offense plays like trash and shoots themselves in the foot over and over and over again, while also being victimized by bad play calling that sets them into an early hole. When you take all of that into account, the Dolphins, the logical explanation is that the Dolphins, while they had a wonderful game, played really well, are still not that good. They're not as good as the 43-17 stat line and the rest of the stats would indicate. And they still are 2-3. They still lost 3 games so far, and the 2 games that they did win, again, I think that there's plenty to indicate that they are not quite as good as you would expect. And look, I mean, even the game we're about to play the Jets, man. And again, I'm not going to get into a super deep discussion there, but the Jets, you know, they're not a very good team for several reasons. They had their fair share of opt-outs to start the year. They have also been decimated by injuries. You know, they just released Le'Veon Bell, whatever. So, you know, and they still have plenty of issues that they need to work through. Again, I don't think that is anywhere close to Gase's fault, but again, that's a whole nother discussion. But look, I mean, we are still, even with the Devon Godshaw injury, we're still pretty much, for the most part, at full strength. We are starting to see some more injuries pile up for the Dolphins. We'll have to wait and see, you know, how Emmanuel Ogbah is and Durham Smythe, if they're going to be able to play, right? But, and obviously Austin Jackson's out for another couple weeks, but we will get him back in a couple weeks. You know, but even with that, we're still pretty much at full strength. So the likelihood is that we're going to go into this game against the Jets and we're probably going to win. And we might even beat them pretty bad at, you know, that is legit, right? But it's not going to prove that the Dolphins are really that great or that they're ready to be a contender or anything like that. It's just not. It's just not. When they can beat these teams, right? When they can beat the Patriots, when they can beat the Bills, they lost those games, right? So they needed to play better than they did to win in those games, right? When they can beat the 49ers at full strength and when they're not decimated, etc., right? Then you can start saying it. And they have to do this more consistently just in general, right? So the bad teams, they need to destroy them, right? And the ones that are decimated by injuries and stuff, they need to take advantage of that stuff. But on the flip side, they also need to do it consistently and prove they can do it against teams when they're at full strength. And they are certainly not they have not done that. They absolutely have not done that. Again, every team that they have played, minus the Patriots, has been decimated by injuries. But even them, their team was incredibly different, right? Completely different. So the Dolphins really, frankly, haven't proven anything yet. But, you know, people, whatever, can feed into whatever narratives they see fit and whatnot. I don't see it. I don't think they are it was a fun game. It was great to watch, etc. But again, I wholeheartedly believe that it does not prove that the Dolphins are as good as what it would, you know, the box score would indicate in that game or whatever, right? And there are certainly other massive relevant factors that need to be taken into account. Yeah, so anyway, I mean, we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. Honestly, you know, we're just going to take it one game at a time and whatnot. We'll see what happens against the Jets. I mean, look, if the Jets somehow come out and win that game, I mean, that would be certainly the ultimate proof. If the Jets can manage, I mean, it's at Hard Rock Stadium too, so it's a home game for us. But if the Jets can somehow manage to come out here and beat us, especially being that we're at basically full strength and they're not, I don't expect that. I actually fully expect the Dolphins to win this game and win it pretty handedly. And even if they do, it still doesn't prove that they're great, because again, the Jets are in massive turmoil for a lot of different reasons, part of which they're decimated by injuries. So look, I mean, you know, beating the Jets still doesn't really say much about them, even if they do it, you know, in blowout fashion. But it would say a lot if they lose to the Jets, right? So, I mean, that's just the reality of it, right? Because the overall context matters, and you have to take every single data point, relevant data point, into account, whether you like it or not. And so that's what I try and do. I hope people appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm gonna get out of here, and that's it for my post-game analysis. Again, sorry it took so long to get out. Obviously now we're knocking on the door of having to play the Jets on Sunday. So tomorrow I'll be expecting to do my preview video for the Jets game. Yeah, I mean, look, and you know, my commentary for that is basically, I mean, I'm going to give you the league standings and the stats and stuff from our previous games. But I'll go ahead and tell you now, I mean, I've already said it, my basic ideas and evaluation there is, I mean, I expect them to beat the Jets and go to move to 3-3 on the season. And I expect them to beat them and pretty, you know, pretty handedly, right? So if they lose to the Jets, that's going to say a lot about them. And if they win, but it's even close, right? That says not as much as losing would say, but it still says a pretty significant amount. But it also depends on the rest of the factors that go into the game. So the officiating, the play calling, how well does each team play, right? So there's a lot of other factors that will play into that evaluation that we just won't know until the game actually plays out. So there's some stuff that we can, you know, look at now ahead of time, like the stats, the league standings, the injuries. And then there's some stuff that we won't know and be able to take into account into our evaluation until the game actually happens. But anyway, that's what I expect. I expect them to beat the Jets pretty handedly. And if they don't, then that says some bad things about them. If they do beat them and beat them handedly, then it says good things, and it definitely will, you know, show things to build on and so on and so forth, like they've already shown. But again, I don't think it will be as, you know, big of a positive as people will make it out to be, like it would be, especially compared to how big of a negative it would be should they lose. Anyway, you get it. I'm gonna get out of here. I hope, you know, people appreciate my perspectives. If you do, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comments section. And of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Phins up.